Now we're recording. So welcome to our August 2022 meetup. We have a special presenter today. All of our presenters are special, but Monica Sheridan is dear to me. She's been a part of Skeleton Key since 2017. Into 2017, she joined us. Brand new to FileMaker, and a lot of time has gone by, but more importantly, even more knowledge has been acquired by Monica, and she stepped up to the plate to present for us this evening. Monica, why don't you take it away and give us a couple of ground rules, like if people should interrupt you or listen to the presentation first, and there you go.
All right. Well, I will share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
And I will say the ground rule is that I'm afraid I have underestimated my audience, and I may have a lot of simple things that you all, remember in your sleep. So I would love to make this more of a discussion and have you all chime in with ways that you work with time and dates and calculations, and we can kind of make this a group effort.
Awesome.
Yeah. So my topic today is working with dates and times and timestamps. And I think this has been a topic for me that keeps coming up because it seems like something that would be just so simple. We calculate time in our daily lives all the time. It comes up in our databases, and it should be easy to calculate and depend on and things like that. And it's often not, or it sneaks into a little problem that causes all of a user's reports to be running at the wrong time, or just something to be calculated totally off. So I thought we could revisit it and talk about best practices and tips and tricks, and so that's what I've got for us. And it will be a perfect segue into Valentine's topic for next week, because at the end I will talk about certain formats that are often needed or accepted by APIs. Right. Now, super simple, just a couple different examples of the formats that we use in FileMaker: timestamps, time, dates. We all know about those, and they can be field types, or we can specify that the result of a calculation would be in one of these formats as well. Now, this is another refresher, just linking back to some of the functions that we have with each of these categories. And I do have some of them in an example file here. So for time, we can get the hour. Some things to remember is that when we're getting the hour, it's going to come back in 0 to 23, as opposed to, 7 p.m. We have minutes, we have seconds that we can grab from a set of time. And then we could use 24-hour formatting. I just did this with the formatting tools as opposed to a field level calculation. So just to remember that is an option there. Some of the date functions here. Oops, too far. I don't know if I can get these both side by side. That we have the ability to grab names, month numbers, days, day names, years. We can parse those all apart and come up with a format or a field that would represent some other records in our database. So basics, some good refreshers, timestamps as well, get current timestamp, host timestamp, some things that we use all the time. And I will talk about some caveats and things like that using them. One thing that just seemed like a good chart to look at and refresh yourself with is finding by dates. I had forgotten that you can look for today's date using the slashes, so it's fun. If you don't use the asterisks, I think that one's a great one to be able to say, I want all months, and I can demonstrate this. I don't have records in this sample database, so I won't find anything. But if I wanted to find all records in December of 2021, I could put an asterisk in for the day and get all of my days within there. Another one that I use often is the ... to be able to find a range. And so I've got a time field, so it's not going to accept my dates here, but as an example, I don't know if that one's on the chart here. But some fun ways to search by times and dates. And I think that Jay has a meetup in the last couple months about finding specifically. So that's in the archives if finding records and things is something that you would find helpful.
Yeah, it's amazing, Monica. Just I'll jump in. How many developers don't know of the operators and the little tips and tricks about what FileMaker does? I guess like I'm going to quote Beverly. She used heavy lifting earlier, right? And there's some really simple operators or methods of finding date and time that FileMaker does for us that boy, if someone were new to database development and they saw FileMaker do what it did and then the SQL version of that, they'd be like, wow, that's so much easier in FileMaker. Anyway, I think you're on the right track there, right, by sharing some of those. Keep going.
Yeah, and I think also I wish there was a better way to have a group of these resources to pass to clients as well, because I see clients often stumbling around like, how do I find that kind of information? And so anytime
yeah,
I
power
can
user types, maybe
demonstrate that. Yeah.
Great. There's one other I don't know if you have this on these here. I hate to keep interrupting. I'll throw it in
Please
chat.
do.
It was Greg Lane uses this a lot, the get current time UTC milliseconds.
I do have that one.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
I figured you would.
Yeah, I'll get to that one.
You
That
did
one
say
is,
interactive discussion, right?
please, yes.
Okay, cool.
I would love that because it's much better when it's a conversation.
I'm gonna hop in too real quickly, and that ... because I can never remember when I'm supposed to be pointing which one of the alligators or the greater than or less than which direction for dates, especially, and to be able to pass in variables and have those ... is always really helpful.
Yes. I'm not sure why they didn't include that on the FileMaker chart. Seems like a helpful one to.
It might just be in general finds and ranges. I'll see if I can find and post that.
Well, it's a bonus.
Yeah, there you go.
You didn't know about the ... It's the most handy. Using time and calculations, just to kind of wrap my head around the way that the calculations work. It's helpful to remember that FileMaker Pro stores time as the number of seconds since midnight. So when doing a calculation, if I were to just say, you know, time plus a number, that would be evaluated as seconds. And so to add an hour to a time, we would use 3,600 seconds. But one thing, and also with time stamps. So that is the number of seconds since midnight on January 1st, 1. And so something that I would prefer to do, as opposed to calculating things in seconds, would be to use the time function that builds time by using the hours, the minutes, and the seconds, and doing calculations within each of those little blocks. So for example, if I wanted to know what 30 minutes from now is, I might use the hour of right now and add just minutes onto the current time, the minutes of the current time. Also, to get an hour, we might subtract 1 from the hours of the current time instead of calculating what that would be in seconds. Just a different way of doing it, but that makes a little more sense to me sometimes when working with time. And that leads me into dates, which are stored as the number of days since January 1. And so you can use days to do calculations on dates, and that for some reason feels a little more logical to me than seconds. But you can also do calculations on dates by using the date function that puts together the month, the day, and the year. And one of my favorite things to do here, let me see, end of the month. So I'm going to grab this one. Oh, you know what? It's not going to let me copy it, but I'm going to go in here. Do a little demonstration. So if I wanted to find the end of the month, I could start with the month plus 1. So September. I'll put everything back. So I'm going to get the 1st of September. So I'm getting my current month plus 1, the 1st of that month, and then the year that we're in, and then subtract 1 from it. So I'm getting September 1st and coming back 1, and FileMaker is smart enough to say, oh, we need the 31st. It's August of 2022. So I think that's really handy when sometimes I don't know, is it going to be a 30-day month, 31? And it updates that all for you. So a little trick there.
I don't know if you're familiar with which your calculation did this, but there's a trick where you can do the month plus 1 and say 0.
Oh, I had
And
not done
that
0
automatically
before.
subtracts you had day 1 minus 1, and so just put
Mhm.
in day 0. And
Okay.
it's the same
Yeah, I have
thing.
not tried that one. That's handy as well. There you go. I love it. So some calculations on times and dates, just using native FileMaker functions. You can subtract dates from one another to grab the number of days between them. And we are going to jump over to some other formats of time that are not native to FileMaker, but sometimes you will run into during development. The first one is UTC, and that stands for Coordinated Universal Time Code. And the internet says that it's the primary time standard by which the world regulates clocks and times. It's the successor of Greenwich Mean Time. And it uses offsets that are recorded to represent time zones and whether or not they are within daylight savings time. Why do we need to care about this in FileMaker? Most of the time it comes up when we are working with third-party software, API calls, and things like that. And so I have put together this screen that works with some ways to gather information about what your UTC time might be right now or what the offset is, using either native FileMaker functions or the Google Time Zone API was something that I had experimented with getting time zone and offset information out of. But one thing that, and I should have looked before my presentation when the current UTC milliseconds function came about, but it's really handy because you can get the universal time code for a client without using third-party APIs. I think one of the challenges about UTC time is that it depends on your time zone. And a lot of times in FileMaker Pro, at least, we don't have location data about our users. And sometimes maybe not even time zone data. So we might know what their current time is, but this gives us the ability to kind of see what their current time is, what the UTC time is, what the offset might be. So we can grab the current UTC in milliseconds, and that's what it looks like there. These are all unstored calculations, so that's why they're updating as I'm chatting with you. Some calculations using the UTC milliseconds. We can get the current UTC time. So right now it's 12 a.m., which is really important to note because right now that's tomorrow. So if I was using something to send a batch email, that might be helpful to know that if I was querying something that was using UTC time and I was comparing the day of tomorrow to today, I might evaluate that as, you know, this report is supposed to run tomorrow, or, you know, some errors could come up there. So we can get the current UTC time, and then we can also translate that back to the current client time. And then using the difference between the UTC timestamp and the current timestamp, we can get the offset currently. And for me in my time zone, it's -5 because we're using daylight savings at the moment, but if not, it is often -6 in Central Standard Time. Do you have anything to add about UTC?
I was just going to say that
milliseconds?
that's obviously, I mean, really helpful for me. I always have a hard time. I think I told you today, wrapping my head around UTC when I need it. So to see that calc right there is very helpful.
Yeah, I'll agree. I didn't realize you could get the offset from that. It's pretty cool.
The UTC, I just looked it up because you mentioned it, Monica. This function, the get current UTC milliseconds was from FileMaker 13.
Oh,
We've
wow.
had it for a while.
I felt like it was new since I'd been around.
Same here. But yeah, we've got some good use cases there. And did I have something else? No, you're gonna get into it. Great.
Awesome. So the other option to find out some of this information is to use API calls or information on the web. One caveat, I suppose, there that I ran into when trying to go this route from FileMaker Pro was that I didn't have the latitude and longitude of my client machine. So if I were to be using FileMaker Go, there are some functions supported that give you that data. And I also tested some JavaScript that you could use in WebDirect. But for now, just hosted on FileMaker Server and using FileMaker Pro. I didn't find a super simple way to get my location data. So these are just hard coded in there at the moment. I didn't dig too far into finding that location data, but that would be a fun challenge to take on next, or if anybody knows any cool tricks about doing that. I'm sure there's some other ways that you could query, like, you know, another API or something like that. But I think, yeah, without having something to grab there, that it's a missing piece. So if you can grab the latitude and longitude, we can send that to the Google timestamp, or sorry, Google time zone API. And what that is returning is the daylight savings offset, the raw offset, the time zone, and the time zone ID. These two pieces here I calculated based on 3600, grabbing the hours out of these seconds. And then if I add these together, then that gives me my offset, taking into consideration the daylight savings time that we happen to be observing in my time zone at the moment. And so I can call that quickly, and it's not going to update anything for me right now, but it'll pass that information back, and I can use, the offsets that it gives me there. One thing that is helpful is to know about daylight savings sometimes. And so although this takes into account your offset, whether or not you're using daylight savings, this will give you, my example there is failing. But this will give you that explicit information about daylight savings. Any other?
Hey, for whatever it's worth, just to answer, I think if I understood correctly, your question there at the top in the right column, Monica, was how do you locate where you are for your time zone? So you can actually, I mean, there is actually JavaScript get time zone offset function, I believe, that you can use in JavaScript. Obviously, it's dependent, I think, on your browser that you run it in, whether you run that in the web viewer or something else. So there's some, so if you're not using incognito or some other mask. And I think similarly, you can ask a Google and it'll tell you, and it's probably relatively easy to parse that out of the results. Just as a simple search query. It'll give you both your time zone and whether you're observing daylight savings at that time in the text results.
Perfect.
Don't know if that's faster or more direct than getting latitude and longitude and then feeding that into the API, but it's an alternate.
Yeah, probably it would be, depending on what your use case was. I know that sometimes one of the use cases that I had for this, and I thought I might have to use the time zone API, was when working with Google email, but I was ultimately able to use just other settings within other calls within that API structure to get it to figure out where the users were and what time zone they needed. So that's all I have about UTC. Unix timestamps were the next piece that I wanted to mention. And it is a way of representing time as the number of seconds since January 1st, 1970. And it's also widely accepted and required often by certain API calls. And so I've got a custom function here using the current timestamp that is calculating the seconds since that date and giving it to me in this format. And this is actually the timestamp that was required by this API to get the information below here. So I used my example in this API. I don't know that there's anything else special to note there. I believe it does use the offset, the time zone offset. So that would be something that you would need to figure out prior to calculating the Unix timestamp. And then Zulu timestamp. This one actually had some really interesting history. So I'll have to share some of these links around if anybody is. I wish Chad was here. He's our pilot. So this one has some aviation history, but it's another way to represent time that is often used in third-party software or API calls. And it's just using UTC time in a different format is the way that I believe, or that I understand the function of it. But we've got, we can see our dates and times in there. So that's something else that we might run into. Then I've got some quizzes, I think, is next. So users have been creating events in their calendars using an API that accepts the time of its calls in UTC. The users are in Pacific time, so their offset has been set at -7. They're all of the sudden experiencing the events being created an hour after the FileMaker record time. What could be causing
this is quiz
the problem? These are true stories. So, and if you really can't guess, I'll have to fill you in. But
Can you
show the question? There we
go. Yeah, I knew Jeremy was going to jump in here. Ooh, a quiz.
A quiz.
Is it competition, right? Here we
go. Yeah, timing you. We're going to break out in groups.
Breakout rooms.
Yeah.
All right, I got to read it again.
And I guess when I say it has been, when I say that their offset has been set, we could say like permanently or hard coded at -7. So we're sending calendar
have
events.
Anything to do with well, okay, my first guess. Do I get to go first?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Where's like the reactions? Gotta raise a hand. Raise hand. There you go.
Jay, you're raising your hand.
Yeah. Does it have anything to do with like time changes? We fall back or What is it? Spring ahead, fall back? Does it have anything to do with that?
It does.
Seasons?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
So because if we're assuming that we hard coded their offset, then it would be working perfectly for 6 months of the year. And then as soon as daylight savings came around, their offset would be wrong and their events would be created at the wrong time, which would.
So was the solution to move the entire office to Phoenix, Arizona, and then hard code it with that offset so that they never experience
They don't have that problem. Yeah,
right.
they don't.
That would be an expensive fix.
But I think if you were to be new to the concept of universal time and you were setting something up using the offset, you might say, oh, I need to know the offset for this time zone. Look it up real quick, enter it into your field, and not think about that it might change based on daylight savings. And that could potentially throw off when your events are created.
So didn't you have did you have a calc? You already figured out the a way right there, right? Down below, you can figure out your offset.
Yeah.
Hey, Jason, is what Monica's showing and what you posted any different? Kind of looks like.
Well, did you calculate the offset using FileMaker natively, or you relied on the API to get it?
I did it both ways. So the calculation you posted is a little bit different than the one that I used natively in FileMaker. But yes, I did.
But they're both
Did take a
relying
stab at
on
it.
that UTC milliseconds function. Cool. We might have to compare the two. So that would allow you to then dynamically, both of you, I guess, are getting at, you could dynamically determine the offset for those users and address that hard code experience that had occurred over there. Jeremy, would you have gotten it that there was a seasonal time change?
That's what I was thinking, but I thought that seemed too easy. I was like, wait, it's gotta be something else. It couldn't just be daylight saving.
Couldn't be that. Well, you got me. Too easy. The next one's easy too. But we've got another. There's one more.
Go. Get your hand raised reaction ready.
Users are scheduling reports to run at a later time. I should have also added some details. Oh man. I guess I can't
answer right there.
I was gonna add them, but I guess I can't add them on the fly. That's not good. The additional detail is they're being queued on the server. So the server is then handling the time after the user is saying, this is the time that I would like to run this report. So the reports are running, but they're not running at the time specified. They're running at the wrong time. What could cause this to happen? And it's not just an hour this time.
Jeremy's got his hand raised.
I tried to raise my hand, but I ended up clapping first. Is the server just in a different time zone and they're not doing the conversion?
You got it. And so that was my reminder that if you have users that are in different time zones, if you have a server that could potentially be on a different time zone and handling calls, or if you're using any of those timestamps to compare what comes next, or if something's been updated based on another time, that you would want to use something that will be the same all of the time. So the host timestamp would be the same for all of the users, regardless of what time zone they were in. That would be something that would be reliable to use. And also the UTC milliseconds would also be the same for all of the users and could be relied on in that case as well.
Was that scenario that you gave right there, Monica, something like there's a FileMaker record essentially that's in a queue and the server should run something at that time? Okay, not just like a scheduled script that's
Correct. Yes, like I
programmed
was
or-
thinking more of like an export or
yeah.
like a query of some kind that was being queued.
That raises a question, and I should know the answer to this, but I don't. If you log into a remote FileMaker server and go into the console to schedule the script to happen at a certain time, whose time is it scheduling? Server's time in the server's time zone, or your time from whatever time zone you happen to be in?
Ooh.
Does anyone know the answer to that without going and testing?
Shoot.
I believe it would be the server's time, because my thought would be that that's all it really truly knows.
I can tell you if you're creating a schedule via the admin API, you do have to express it in the server's time zone.
We'd also be curious to know, and this is something I think that, again, probably is a good follow-up, because it may depend on the host type you're using and where it's physically hosted, as to whether you can count on your server respecting its local time zones, daylight savings rules, given that some states don't and some do, and some of the places you host things are in zones and not necessarily in specific states. It'd be interesting to know if you were to pick a state that did or didn't respect daylight savings time, whether you would see your server schedules adjust appropriately or stay fixed. So there's a couple just curiosities there, nothing that we need to solve today, but geeky questions.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Some pieces of just things to remember in case you're working with dates or times and your calculations aren't giving you what you expect. Get as date, get as time, get as timestamp can often be helpful when passing dates and times as parameters. Sometimes they can kind of get out of format when that happens. And like a date will be evaluated as a number, and then it becomes a division problem and things like that. So those can be helpful to get those pieces of information in a specific format. Using the data viewer, the watch tab, breaking out your calculations into different pieces is a great thing to do if that's not something you're in the practice of doing already. Check your time zones, your daylight savings. Make sure that if there's any date comparisons, that we're comparing the host times and the UTC milliseconds versus just relying on client timestamp data. Just some things to remember there. And a funny thing that I learned as I was prepping is that, and I would love to know if anyone else knew this, or if I'm just late to the game, that Unix timestamps will cease to work in 2038 due to a 32-bit overflow. So all of our APIs and databases that are relying on Unix time, I suppose, will need to be updated.
I did not know that.
Or
I
so
would-
Skynet would lead us to believe.
Yeah, that could be someone April Fool's to Monica as she was preparing.
Did you say
but-
Skynet?
I did. I dropped the Terminator reference.
I'll be 67 that year. I don't know.
Will you care about Unix time and
Yeah,
how it ceases to
I don't
exist?
know. As long as my retirement account's paying me accurately, or maybe it would be in my favor or something at that date.
Inspirity's not
not know.
using Unix time, are they? Because
I
that would be
hope not.
important.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh, I don't, did we talk about, yeah, we did. We talked about
Yeah.
Zulu. Yeah, okay. We won't go back to that. Oh, okay. That's all I have.
I was gonna ask you one thing, Monica, because
Yeah.
it might, maybe people have gotten into this. When you start getting into doing execute SQL functions, there, times and dates, formatting can get a little bit wonky in there, and I'm definitely not an expert. I bet Beverly could jump in if we threw something at her, but I know we've had to like use some of those date functions at times to reassemble. Okay, yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up from her already, to reassemble dates in a different format if you're doing queries. But anyway, I'll be quiet. I don't know if you ran across any of that, or if anyone else has something
Beverly,
to
fill us
contribute.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just ask for the date, it returns it as year dash month dash day, which is great. I mean, that takes care of your I'm down under or I'm not down under kind of thing. Where your month and your day need to interchange, or Canada. Sorry, Jason. And so for me, I'm always promoting, use that, and everybody's okay. We don't care because it's always going to be year, month, day. And it sorts perfectly for anybody that ever appends that to a document.
To a file, yeah, a number of files,
Yeah,
right.
file name or anywhere. It's perfect in sort order, as a number, as a date, and as, chronologically as a date and alphabetically as a date. So it's, I just wish we all had that. But there are a couple things, and I'd have to look them up. But there are a couple ways to say, I want to convert that date, and you just like a SQL call, that when you put that around that date that gets returned, that date column, it'll return it in month, day, year with the slashes, and it's, or day, month, year, and the slashes depending on your locale. So if you need to do that, then do that. But like I say, it's easier to just go ahead and get the values as year, month, day, and then reconfigure them with a date function if you need to be locale specific, because that'll take care of that too.
Cool. And then Mark threw something in there about our naming convention at skeleton key for files, documents. Yep, it'll sort it just like that.
Yeah, I use it all the time.
Same here. I use text expander. I'm sure there are other helpers like that it prompts or puts out dates like that for me, the current date, which is great.
And like I say, the fact that you can sort a list of files and it'll put it in that chronological order, because that kind of date is, correct in that kind of order and alphabetically. So
I wanted more quiz questions, Monica.
yeah. Good presentation.
Oh man. Should have
I have
came
a
up with
couple.
some
I have a
harder
couple
ones.
recent. I have a couple recent questions like that, which we can do after the recording that came out of summer camp this year. If people really want to go down the brain teaser route.
Oh yeah.
But on a related topic to this, Monica, I know that you've got a blog post that will be coming out shortly after this event related to time. Did you, in the process of preparing this or that blog post, review or talk to Greg at all about his Engage presentation from, I think it was 2020?
I have not.
So I'll share that link as well, since your post isn't out yet. But he presented on keeping time in the global workplace and some of the same challenges, and I think that you're talking about here. And I think it's a perennial topic, one that is timely, right, and timeless. So I think it's he's got some good resources in the sample file, and there's a recording link there. And I think between your presentation today and that dated information, it kind of will fill in all kinds of gaps and reinforce some of the same messages. So I'll post that link.
Yeah, I would love to see that too. Should have known. Greg beat me to the punch.
And another aside with that year dash month dash date, FileMaker won't accept that as a valid date. But if you convert those negative signs to a plus sign, FileMaker is really happy and lets it go into a date field.
Are you serious?
If you're importing, I swear it. I mean, it's just when I discovered that.
Is that documented or just
knees.
like some funky?
I think it is, and I think it has to do with the Japanese dates or something.
Wow.
I could see that.
That you can say year, plus sign, month, plus sign, date, and FileMaker will import it. It will, you could type it in that way, and it's just happy as a clam.
Oh, Valerie. Good find. I had no idea. Does it actually like
Convert
I
it, or
say?
does
Yeah,
it keep it that way?
that's what I was
No, it
wondering.
actually, well,
Like, does the data stay in there with the pluses and all?
I can't remember. I know when I would do it, I would do an auto enter that would convert it.
Interesting.
Because you can put text into a number field unless you have it validated to not allow that. But if you're saying doing an import and it's all of this kind of date, and you do an auto enter on that field and say, substitute out the minus sign for a plus, then it, it's happy, it sets it auto enter to the valid date as you would like it. And again, it's depending on your locale, it comes in correctly with the slashes.
I was really impressed with taken aback by something you showed, Monica, and then I looked it up in the date format examples. Here, I'll post that link. It's just in the documentation or the help section of FileMaker Pro. If someone wanted to look at that, down in their examples of how they're using actually, Valerie, you'd said it, putting 0 as the day. Did I catch that right? That'll tell you in the date format. Shoot, what's the best way to do it? Monica, did you have data viewer open by any chance?
And I have the 0 in there.
Do you?
Still,
Cool.
I think. Let me grab it. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So we did next month, September, 0 for the day and year.
Yeah. They were even saying, so there was that example, and then there's also the example of putting like 13 or 14 in the month. And you can keep going like that. Like I didn't realize that if you were figuring out, let's say, like terms of a loan, and it's like it's a 72 month term, and you just take, if you have it broken up like this, and you're like, okay, plus whatever today's month is. So today's August, so it's 8, and you're like, it's a 72 month loan, and you just added the 8 plus 72, it'll like rip out the new date for you. It's pretty pretty funky.
Yeah.
I saw Beverly's post just now.
Or I was even thinking like negative. -2. That's fun.
And you were talking about some finds earlier, finding by date.
Mhm.
I may have a database open to
Oh
share
yeah, I don't have
something.
good data for finds. Just have one record.
But you know what? Maybe
I
do you have
put
a
a-
date field?
I
Oh,
put a
sorry.
do,
link
yeah.
in there for the knowledge base that has some ways to do finds for dates. There are several articles in there. If
Did you
it's not
post
in
that
the
earlier?
help, I always go to knowledge base. Up a little ways.
There it is.
Just above where I said date, month, +1, colon,
Mhm.
0, semicolon, year. There's
At
a
7:12 p.m. Central Time. Just so we're like doing the
Yeah. Yeah, 8:12. My time.
right. See, time zone,
Yeah.
offset.
Here we go. Yeah.
But there's when you do that, it shows you all of the articles that relate to dates. Range of dates is what I was looking up. And so there are articles in there about finding a range of dates and kind of different things you can do. Like if you just put in year, ... and then another year, it'll find from January 1st of that year to December 31st of the second year. Like it took me a long time to learn that one. So like, oh yeah, I can find a whole year.
Right. And actually, Monica, I think you were showing us that if you use the asterisks, right?
Yeah.
Like instead of the day, you can actually do something like just find me well, actually, if you just typed in like 2022, it'll find all records with within that year, instead of having to say from January 1,
Yeah.
2022 to ... and something else. You can just go, hey, show me 2022, and it'll figure that out for you. Same thing with like, I can't remember if you can just put in the month, like 8, and it knows what to look for.
I think you could, but it would also give you like if there was 8 in the day.
Oh, would it?
I
Okay.
think so.
I know you can search for day of the week. I think you can search for month name, but I'm just guessing at that one. I know you can
Can
search
you
for like,
really?
show me Monday, Monday 2022, and it'll only find Mondays in 2022. So it's very good at converting day names on the fly into the appropriate parameters. But
That's
I think it does it with
amazing how
months, too.
fast that is. That's like what you just said, Mark. Monica said it earlier, right? Like some of these things would be really helpful for day-to-day use for users.
I want to say we had a newspaper who was using FileMaker to generate all the subscription and delivery requirements, because they offered residents all different kinds of options about when they wanted to get the paper. So they could do like a 3-paper-a-week program or a 4-paper-a-week program, and then they could
Wow.
specify which days they wanted. And what it led to was that everybody had a unique delivery structure of related records that represented the days that they should get the paper, because the patterns were not just custom patterns, but then people could suspend a range of dates when they were going to be out of town, or they might want to find everybody who had a Monday in July so they could do a special insert for them. So they had this need to be able to search by day of the week across very large sets of records. And that was a lifesaver. You know, we could just say, find all Mondays or using constrained find, you could say, find everything in, these 3 months, and then summarize it down to the Mondays. So there were all kinds of ways using the day of the week name.
I had no idea you could do that. I just tried it right now.
I didn't either.
Yeah, find me January 2022
How many years have we
Tuesdays.
been doing this?
We're
I
recording
didn't
this,
know
right?
that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love
You got credit.
Love it.
Yeah.
I should have consulted with the team before my presentation.
No, that's the whole
No,
point
no,
of a
no.
meetup, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
there's some nugget you're like, I've known how to do that for years. And then someone's like, you can do searches by day names. Are you kidding me?
I had no idea.
You can also use 2 dots instead of 3 for the ellipses, which is something that someone
Really?
showed me once. That can save you a
Didn't know
couple
that.
thousand periods a year if you use it that
Yeah.
frequently.
How many of those things were intentional or a mistake?
Most of them, I think, are they're documented. I mean, if you look a search for finding dates, you'll find the Monday example. It showed up in several FT. I didn't know it. I didn't discover it. I think I learned it in an FTS book years ago, or in a sample file from John Mark Osborne or Ray Colligan or something like that. Like it was just, and then it stuck because it was interesting to me. There's a lot of tricks on finds and that I think are just hidden gems that if you don't use them regularly and you didn't learn them when you needed them, they just don't stick. But
Yeah,
they've
it's
been
funny.
there
FileMaker
beginning.
doesn't give like within the application itself in the insert operators menu, it's
Mhm.
not showing those options. You know, when it comes to date, it's like today's date or invalid date, and doesn't get into all the nitty gritties that we just talked about there, like the little shortcuts. So
Yeah.
you'd have to know it. I've never seen that Tuesday, January thing before. Winter.
Yeah, I'm looking at the FileMaker 12 help, which was just what Google brought up, and there's even some others in there. So I'm sure they still persist. Like equals THU will find all dates that occur on a Thursday. The searching for the Tuesday would find for all the Tuesdays. Doesn't look like they supported months back then. Oh no. Yeah, but maybe that's changed.
Yeah, I don't see the month thing as far as like the text. Is that what you're saying? Like April or abbreviation for it?
And that would be locale specific sometimes
Ah, true.
too. So if you have a German version of FileMaker, it's not going to match what you think.
Okay, here's a little quiz. Let's see what's the default year that FileMaker will put in when doing a search. Like if you did a search and you just typed in 6, what's the result? Today's like if you did that today and you typed a 6 as a search criteria in a date field, what would you get?
Do the current year.
That would be the default year. Yep. And what would be the found set though? Or well, if assuming you had, you know, a lot of different records and you do a find for just the number 6 in a date field, what would FileMaker actually look up?
June?
Yeah, June of 2022.
Nice.
So it takes that into effect. Like I think you would, if you didn't want 2022, because it assumes that you're looking for this year's June, then you do something like 6/2021, and you'd get all of June of 2021. But some real fast finds. I mean, like, can you imagine talking to one of your users right now, Monica, you know, tomorrow and going like, oh yeah, you wanted April just of this year, just like look for 4 in that
And it
field.
wouldn't give you like January 4th and February 4th.
No, it's got
Wow.
some assumption in there. It's all of April of the current year if you don't put anything else in there.
Cool.
But that Tuesday, that's a winner, Mark. Oh my gosh.
Hey,
It's so ridiculous.
time check for you, Jay and Monica.
Oh
we're
yeah,
at
we're
8:01.
there and we're recording, so we need to wrap it up. Monica, thank you very much. That was a lot of fun. And
Thank you.
if you guys come up with some additional interesting date time functions, let us know. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And join us next month. We've got Valentine on the docket. Valentine's presented before. about APIs and what he does to develop APIs. But this time around, he wants to do a spin on it and to troubleshoot working with APIs. So not just like best practices for how to work with them, but like actually walking through a troubleshooting process. So it should be extremely valuable, I think. So thanks for joining us, folks, and be sure to RSVP for next month. We look forward to seeing you then. Good night.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
See
everyone.
ya.
Bye.